Hey, IOStux here. Today we'll talk about win conditions. Quick little shout out to the people who made this new mic possible. You can see them on screen. Here we can see the topics of today. You can pause the video to read through them. A win condition is a requirement that has to be met in order to win the game. Today I want to go over the most common win conditions and how you can apply them. Starting out with the shutdown. The shutdown consists of finding the enemy carry, finding ways how to shut him down, and thus cripple the enemy team and ensure that you will win in the end. The first step is to determine the enemy carry. In this case, the enemy team consists of Roadhog Reinhardt, Ana Lucio, and a Genji. So in this case, the clear carry is the Genji. Keep in mind that this also includes the enemy player's skill. So just because the enemy has a Genji doesn't mean that he has to be the hard carry. Always look at their career profiles. After that, try to look at your own team and find out what counters you have. In this situation, you are the Winston in blue, so you counter Genji, and you also have Symmetra, who is really good against Genji. Next up, ask yourself, will that be enough? In this case, you have two counters against the Genji. If that doesn't work out, or you need more counters, then you need to go to the next step, which is to adapt. In this case, we change the Pharah, coming from spawn and going for the teleporter, to a Mei, so that we have three characters who excel at dealing with Genji. After that, re-evaluate. In this case, we have Winston, Symmetra and Mei, who all can deal with the Genji. And now you need to ask yourself, will this be enough? In my personal opinion, I think that these three picks should be enough to counter the Genji. After you are done with the theory, you need to execute. In this case, Winston jumps on the Genji and looks for support from his team. So in a prior, he asks the Zarya for a shield, which allows him to stay alive for long enough to kill the Genji. Let's have a look at another example. In this case, we determine the enemy carry to be the soldier. Maybe he's smurfing, or maybe he's a soldier one trick. And you play Zarya. So you ask yourself the question, how can you counter him? In this case, the answer is not at all. Zarya's kit doesn't really have any abilities or mechanics that deal with the soldier very well. So you adapt, and you may want to swap to a D.Va. Now, in order to execute this and actually counter the soldier, you need to focus on soaking his damage, especially during his ultimate. This way you successfully shut down the enemy soldier if you play correctly and the enemy doesn't adapt. Let's have a look at the next win condition. And this one is pocketing. In this case, you play the Mercy, marked in blue. Similar to shutting someone down, this time you need to find your carry on your team. In this case, you say that your Pharah is by far the best player. Next up, you need to ask yourself, how can you support him with your current character? In this case, since you already play Mercy, you can just fly up to her and pocket her, which is really effective. Now, ask yourself the question, is that going to be enough? In this case, we can see that we also have a Zarya and a Symmetra on the team, so we may want to communicate with them that Zarya needs to have a look on Pharah so that she can shield her, and that Symmetra makes sure that her shield is on her all of the time. Sometimes adapting to the situation doesn't mean that you switch characters or change your playstyle, but that you tell your team about your plan so that they themselves can adapt their playstyle as well. If you want to see this style of play in action, I really recommend you watch the Overwatch World Cup and the Russia matches, because Shadowmern on his Genji got pocketed really good. Let's have a look at another example. In this case, you determine your Reaper to be the star player, and you play Zenyatta. Now, you can put your healing orb on you, but that's not really pocketing, that's just regular supporting, so you can't really support him at all. So how do you adapt? In this case, you may want to swap to Ana. Most of the time you already have a Lucio, so you aren't really missing out on the Zenyatta ultimate, and Ana is a really good fit anyways. Now in the execution, you may want to coordinate nano boosts with him. This way you are a lot more helpful to him than you were with the Zenyatta. Let's take a look at another win condition, and this one is picking. In this case, we are McCree on the high ground, and we have our high noon. So first up, you need to find an opportunity. Okay, don't get scared by this infographic. The targets, who are circled in blue, are the targets of McCree's Deadeye. In this case, we have two possible picks. In the back left, we have a Tracer flanking, and McCree could drop down and flashbang her and kill her. Now the risk of this would be that he could potentially miss his flashbang, or potentially miss the headshot afterwards. And the reward for doing that successfully is that the enemies don't really have a threat anymore, since Tracer can't apply pressure on your backline. The other potential pick is the Mercy, who is out of position. There isn't really a risk, since if you ult her, no one can really stop you, since you are out of range of the Rotok hook, and Winston won't be fast enough to jump on you and shield the Deadeye. And the reward for doing so successfully would be that the enemy team potentially won't have a res if she has a res up, and the enemy team will lack sustain, since the only healer they will have is the Zenyatta in the back, and Zenyatta won't be able to heal 2 tanks. In this case, the smarter choice was to kill the Mercy using your Deadeye. Now, once you have done that, you need to capitalize on the advantage, since in this case it's a 6v5. If you had multiple pick opportunities at the start, now is a good time to finish the job. Now, Mercy is dead, thanks to your Deadeye. However, Tracer is still lurking around. Now that the low risk, high reward plays are over, you can try to drop down and go for the kill. Because even if you fail, the enemies are still down their Mercy. Always go for the low risk, high reward plays first, and then do the high risk, low reward plays. Alright, let's take a look at the thought process for picking. In this case, the team size was a 6v6, so the required advantage would be a 6v5. Now if the team size, for instance, would be a 5v6, then the required advantage would be a 5v4. In that case, we would need 2 picks in order to get an advantage. We had 2 pick targets, the Tracer and the Mercy, and you were McCree. And we had 2 opportunities, either to flashbang the Tracer or to ult the Mercy. The lower risk play of the 2 would be to ult Mercy, since it doesn't require any mechanical skill. This is the golden rule of picking. Don't increase risk for improved results if conditions are met. A 6v5 is enough to win the fight. Don't charge your McCree ultimate for longer in hopes of killing multiple targets. Only killing the Mercy in this case was enough to win. Another win condition is overtime. In this situation, you are on the opposite team and you play Tracer, and Mercy with the res is a little further behind. Now, Rotok, Sombra and Winston are dead on the point, and overtime will come up in 5 seconds. You need to ask yourself, is there potential for a comeback? Now the answer to that question in 99% of the cases is yes, so you should usually almost try to go for overtime. In this case, yes, there is potential for a comeback, because Mercy can rest the team. So what you do as Tracer is shortly before the timer ends, you jump on the point to trigger overtime. Now, did you need to die or not? In this case, the Mercy has a res, so whether you die or not isn't really that important as long as you trigger overtime, since Mercy would be able to just res you. Because you triggered overtime, you bought Mercy enough time to come in and res the team. So in this case, Mercy gets a quad res, and Zenyatta comes to the fray as well. So all of a sudden, the game, which was almost over, got a second chance for the enemy team, or in this case for your team, because you triggered overtime and allowed for a comeback. Let's swap this around. In this case, you are on the other team and you play McCree on the high ground position again. Another win condition is to prevent an enemy delay. So again, the game is almost over, there are only a couple seconds, and you need to ask yourself the question in the last seconds of a game, is there anyone who can delay? In this case, the enemy who can delay is Tracer. So even though the game looks like it's almost won, it isn't over yet. So you should drop down and intercept the Tracer. If you don't intercept her, she will trigger overtime, Mercy will come in for the rest, and you need to try and win an entire team fight again. Now, if you just intercept the Tracer in the last couple seconds, she won't be able to trigger overtime and you already won the game. This way you can save yourself a lot of hassle, and I think you probably know the situation where a game is going really well, but then in the last couple seconds you end up losing it. This is how you can prevent that. One important thing to note when delaying is if you need to stay alive, you should hop on the point in intervals. Keep in mind that you don't need to keep overtime at its max. It's enough to just refresh it. So for instance, as Tracer, you can just blink on the point and blink out immediately, and do this regularly to keep overtime going and not let it run out. Also, even when the game is almost won, always prevent the enemies from delaying. Sometimes you aren't the deciding factor on whether a win condition is met or not. In this case, you can support win conditions. So if you see a win condition for your teammate, make sure that it happens. For instance, McCree needs to get a pick and you don't want that to stop. So you can either body block him, Maybe you can cover him with your Reinhardt or your Zarya shield, or maybe as D.Va you can aim your defense matrix at him. If the soldier needs to ult in order to win the next fight, then you may want to nano boost him. If Reaper needs to ult, then you may want to Zarya shield him and keep an eye out on him. Or if one of the enemy wants to delay, then everyone should focus on that enemy and prevent him from delaying. Clutching is also a term that is tossed around a lot. Basically, clutching means that you are the only deciding factor on whether the game will end up in a win or in a lose. For instance, if you are the last survivor, or if you are the only one with an ultimate that can make a difference. You are the only one who can turn the game around, and you are the only one who can fulfill a win condition. If you mess up, you will lose. However, if you do good, you win. And if you want to climb the ladder, which obviously shouldn't be your main goal, however, if you want to climb the ladder, these are the situations that you need to succeed in if you want to climb, because these are the games that you need to win. While clutching, also have a look at the risk. You should always minimize the risk. Only fulfill the win condition, don't get greedy. For example, when there are only maybe 20 seconds left, killing one person with Zarya's ultimate can be enough to win an entire fight if you manage to catch the enemy carry off guard. So in this case, even though you only killed one person with your Zarya ultimate, it's not a waste. You don't have to go for big combos. Also, keep in mind value. As I just said, if there are 20 seconds left, everyone who dies is out of the game. They won't be able to come back before the game ends without a delay. So the last few seconds are the most valuable. Use everything. Never lose the game without using your ultimate. So in conclusion, at the start, at the end of the round, always think about your win condition. Also, don't get greedy. Take just enough risk to fulfill a win condition. Adapt. Sometimes winning means getting out of your comfort zone. So you may want to swap to another hero that you're also pretty good at, just to support one of your teammates. You don't have to be the carry every single time. Sometimes the real carries are those who support the DPS. My name is IOStax, and I'd like to thank you for learning.